Hello, and welcome to Infidelity Tales Lab. Your support means everything to us. We'd love to know, which geographical location are you joining from today? At home? On the go? Share with us below. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Golden Cage. Dominic Foster surveyed the sprawling estate he'd built from nothing. At 52, he was the picture of self-made success. Owner of Foster Security Solutions, one of the country's premier private security firms. The six-bedroom colonial mansion in Westchester County spoke of wealth, but to Dominic, it increasingly felt like a museum he merely maintained rather than a home. 23 years of marriage to Vanessa had yielded 2 children, Trevor, now 21, and Heather, 19. What had begun as a whirlwind romance had calcified into something performative. Vanessa, once a struggling art student when they met, had transformed into a social climber obsessed with status and appearances. Dominic watched from his study as she directed the landscapers with imperious gestures. At 47, Vanessa remained striking, dark hair expertly colored to hide any gray, her figure maintained through religious devotion to personal trainers and cosmetic procedures. She caught his eye through the window and gave a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. His phone buzzed. A text from Ray Donovan, his oldest friend and head of operations at Foster Security. Need you to look at the Northlake contract. Something doesn't add up. Dominic appreciated Ray's thoroughness. They'd served together in Army intelligence before Dominic founded the company, making Ray his first hire. 15 years Ray's senior, Dominic had always been somewhat of a mentor to him, though Ray's own brilliance had quickly made them equals. "Dad!" Trevor's voice came from the doorway. "Got a minute?" Dominic turned to see his son, tall but slouching, intelligent but directionless. Trevor had Dominic's build, but Vanessa's delicate features and perpetual look of dissatisfaction. "What's up, son?" Trevor fidgeted with the sleeve of his designer sweater, another of Vanessa's purchases. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the internship at the company." Dominic nodded cautiously. He'd offered Trevor a position in the business months ago, hoping to instill some work ethic, but Vanessa had shot it down, insisting their son focus on his connections at his Ivy League school. "I want to do it," Trevor said. "This summer. Your mother won't like it." Trevor's jaw tightened. "I'm not asking her permission." Dominic felt a rare flash of pride. Perhaps there was some backbone in the boy after all. "Monday, 8 a.m. sharp. You'll start in operations with Ray." After Trevor left, Dominic turned back to the window. Vanessa was gone, and a black Lexus was pulling out of the driveway. Her weekly charity committee meeting. 4th one this month. He checked his watch. 3 p.m. on a Thursday. Odd time for a committee meeting. He picked up his phone and dialed. "Patricia," he said to his executive assistant, "cancel my meetings tomorrow. Tell them something's come up." Chapter 2, Suspicions. The exclusive Westridge Country Club hummed with Friday afternoon activity. Dominic, dressed casually in a polo and slacks, spotted his target immediately. Bradley Whitman, the club's tennis pro. Athletic, mid-30s, with a practice charm that Dominic instantly disliked. According to the club schedule conveniently accessible through his membership portal, Vanessa had standing private lessons every Friday at 2 p.m. for the past 3 months. Dominic watched from the terrace as Whitman coached an elderly couple, all smiles and encouragement. No sign of Vanessa today. "Interesting. Mr. Foster, what a pleasure to see you during the day." Martin Coleman, the club president, approached with hand extended. "Martin," Dominic shook his hand firmly. "Just taking a break from the grind. Beautiful facility you've got here. All thanks to members like you. I've been meaning to call about the security upgrade proposal you sent over." "No rush," Dominic waved casually. "By the way, my wife raves about the new tennis pro. Whitman, right?" Martin nodded. "Bradley's been a fantastic addition. Very popular with the ladies' clinics." "I bet he is," Dominic said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Vanessa's been taking private lessons, but I've never seen him play." Martin looked momentarily confused. "Oh, I wasn't aware Mrs. Foster had private sessions with Bradley. He's generally booked solid with the group clinics." Dominic felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. "My mistake. Must have misunderstood." After making his excuses to Martin, Dominic drove to Foster Security's headquarters, a nondescript building that belied the cutting-edge technology within. He bypassed the main entrance and took the private elevator to his office suite. Ray was waiting, concern etched on his face. At 37, Ray had the build of someone who never let go of military discipline. Close-cropped hair, watchful eyes, and a perpetual readiness that came from years in the field. "You look like hell," Ray said bluntly. "Need a favor," Dominic replied, closing the door. "Off the books." Ray straightened. "Name it. I need surveillance on Vanessa. Discreet, comprehensive. Phone, email, movements." Ray didn't flinch. "Timeline. Yesterday. This about the Lexus that's been parked 2 blocks from your house every Thursday." Dominic raised an eyebrow. "You knew. Noticed it doing my weekly perimeter check on your property last month. Black Lexus, registered to a shell company. Thought it might be corporate espionage targeting you. And you didn't tell me because was gathering intel before bringing it to you. Driver is Bradley Whitman, tennis pro at your club." Dominic absorbed this, a muscle working in his jaw. "Show me everything." Ray pulled out a tablet. "There's more. Trevor came to me last week. Said he was worried about his mother. Asked if I'd look into some texts he saw on her phone. And you didn't tell me this either? The kid was looking out for you, Dom. I told him I'd handle it." Dominic felt a twist of something between pride and sorrow for his son. "What else am I missing?" Ray hesitated. "There's money moving out of your joint accounts. Small amounts, but consistent. To a holding company registered in her maiden name." The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was calculated. Dominic leaned back, feeling a cold clarity he hadn't experienced since his operational days. "Give me everything." And Ray? Not a word to anyone. Chapter 3. Evidence Mounts. Heather Foster's surprise visit home from college brought a temporary reprieve from Dominic's investigations. His daughter had always been his weakness, brilliant, independent, and possessing a moral clarity that reminded him of himself before life had hardened him. They sat on the back patio, Heather animatedly describing her research project while Dominic listened with genuine interest. She was studying psychology, fascinated by the human capacity for self-deception. "People build these elaborate realities, Dad," she explained, completely disconnected from truth. "And they'll fight to preserve those illusions, even when confronted with evidence." Dominic smiled thinly. "Speaking from experience there, Hummingbird?" She rolled her eyes at the childhood nickname. "I'm just saying, sometimes the hardest person to be honest with is yourself." Their moment was interrupted by Vanessa's arrival, arms laden with shopping bags. Her surprise at seeing Heather seemed genuine, quickly masked with effusive greetings. "Darling, why didn't you tell us you were coming?" She embraced Heather, who returned it stiffly. Spontaneous decision. "Just wanted to see Dad." The slight emphasis on Dad wasn't lost on Dominic. Interesting. Vanessa's phone chimed. She glanced at it, a fleeting expression crossing her face before she tucked it away. "I've got to make a call. Business for the foundation gala." After she left, Heather's expression darkened. "She's still seeing him, isn't she?" Dominic froze. "What are you talking about?" Heather gave him a look of exasperated pity. "Dad, come on." "Bradley Whitman, the tennis pro. Trevor told me he was worried." "How long have you known?" "Since Christmas." The way she'd check her phone, slip away for errands. Then Trevor found some texts. She leaned forward. "Dad, there's more." Trevor overheard her talking to Bradley about money. "Your money." Dominic's expression remained neutral, a skill honed through decades of negotiation. "Why didn't you tell me?" "We weren't sure at first." Then, she hesitated. "Mom's been saying things to Trevor, that you're pulling away, becoming obsessed with work, that you're probably having affairs yourself." Dominic felt a flare of rage. "She's been poisoning your brother against me?" "Trying to, but Trevor didn't buy it. That's why he wanted the internship, to get closer to you, away from her influence." That night, after a tense family dinner, Dominic reviewed the files Ray had sent him. Photos of Vanessa and Bradley together, financial records showing systematic withdrawals, and most damning, a recorded conversation between them discussing after the divorce. "He'll never see it coming," Vanessa's voice said. "Bradley, we're talking millions. All those years of putting up with his controlling behavior, his obsession with his business, his neglect. I deserve half of everything. Bradley's voice was smooth, calculated. Just make sure the foundation transaction goes through first. Once that money's moved, it'll be nearly impossible to trace. The foundation. Vanessa's pet project, supposedly helping underprivileged youth with art education. Dominic had contributed significant funds, both personally and through the company. He pulled up the foundation's financial records, which Ray had helpfully accessed. Sure enough, there were irregularities, large sums transferred to program development that showed no corresponding programs. His phone buzzed with a text from Ray. "We need to talk." "Not on the phone. Tomorrow." Dominic stared out at the manicured lawn, the expensive landscaping, the pool that Vanessa had insisted on renovating last year. All symbols of a life that was built on quicksand. 23 years of marriage. 2 children. And beneath it all, a calculated betrayal that cut to his core. Not just the affair. Affairs were common enough in their social circle. But the systematic deception, the financial theft, the manipulation of his children. In his years running security operations around the world, Dominic had seen the worst of humanity. But this was personal. His phone buzzed again. A separate text, this time from an unknown number. The children deserve to know the truth. Saturday. Family barbecue. Be ready. Chapter 4. Machinations. Saturday morning found Dominic in Ray's modest apartment, reviewing the final pieces of evidence. The apartment served as an unofficial secure location, free from potential surveillance. "Whoever sent that text knows about the affair," Ray said, pacing. "Could be someone from the club, could be one of Whitman's other conquests. Or it could be Bradley himself," Dominic mused. "Setting up some kind of confrontation. What's your play here, Dom?" Dominic leaned back, his expression unreadable. "I'm going to give them exactly what they want." Ray looked skeptical. "You're walking into a trap." "No." Dominic's smile was cold. "I'm setting one." He outlined his plan. Ray listened, his expression shifting from concern to grudging admiration. "That's ruthless, even for you." "They chose the battlefield," Dominic said simply. "I'm just changing the rules of engagement." Back at home, preparations for the annual Foster family barbecue were underway. Vanessa directed caterers with military precision, seemingly oblivious to the storm gathering around her. "There you are," she said as Dominic entered the kitchen. "The Havershams are bringing their new son-in-law. Be nice." "Of course," he replied pleasantly. "By the way, I invited a few colleagues. Hope it's all right." She frowned. "This is supposed to be friends and family, Dominic. Ray's practically family. And Patricia's been with me for 15 years. Vanessa's disapproval was clear, but she merely sighed. "Fine. Just make sure they understand this isn't a networking event." As she left, Dominic caught Trevor watching from the doorway. "Everything ready for Monday?" Dominic asked. Trevor nodded. "Ray's got me set up with security protocols and basic operations." "Good. After today, things might get complicated." Trevor's expression hardened. "Because of Mom and Bradley?" Dominic studied his son. "You know more than you've let on. I know she's planning to leave you. I know about the money." Trevor's voice was tight. "I know she tried to convince me it was your fault." Dominic placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "After today, everyone will know the truth. Are you prepared for that?" Trevor straightened, looking more like Dominic than ever before. "I'm on your side, Dad. Always have been." The barbecue began at noon. The Foster estate filled with the upper echelon of Westchester society. Old money, new money, and those desperately pretending to have money. Vanessa was in her element, gliding between groups with practiced charm. At precisely 2 p.m., Ray arrived with Patricia, both dressed casually but observant. They circulated separately, positioning themselves strategically around the property. At 2:30, Heather arrived with a surprise guest, her psychology professor, Dr. Abigail Winters, a renowned expert in family systems therapy. Dominic welcomed them warmly, introducing Dr. Winters to key guests while Vanessa looked on with thinly veiled annoyance. The trap was set. Now, they just needed the prey to arrive. Chapter 5. The Barbecue Incident. By late afternoon, the barbecue was in full swing. Dominic maintained the perfect host facade, all while watching the invisible clockwork of his plan turning. Trevor had positioned himself near the bar, subdued but observant. Heather and Dr. Winters engaged with various guests, their conversations seemingly casual but deliberately steering toward topics of trust and betrayal. At 4:15, Dominic's phone buzzed. A text from Ray, black Lexus approaching. Dominic moved to the grill, taking over cooking duties from the caterer with a genial wave. Let me handle this. Everyone loves my steaks. From this position, he had a clear view of the front drive. Right on cue, a black Lexus SUV pulled up. Bradley Whitman emerged, looking confident in designer casual wear that screamed, trying too hard. He carried a small gift bag and strode toward the party as if he belonged. Dominic watched as Vanessa spotted Bradley, her expression flickering through shock, fear, and then forced composure. She moved to intercept him, but Bradley had already been greeted by Heather, who, as instructed, was loudly introducing him to guests as Mom's special friend. The whispers began immediately. Vanessa reached them, her smile brittle. Bradley, what a surprise. I didn't realize you were coming. Wouldn't miss it, Bradley replied smoothly. Your husband was kind enough to invite me. Something about wanting to meet his wife's tennis instructor. Vanessa's eyes darted to Dominic, who raised his beer in a mock toast from across the lawn. The color drained from her face. As planned, Ray approached, clapping a hand on Bradley's shoulder. Mr. Whitman, glad you could make it. Why don't you come meet some people? Ray steered Bradley toward a group that included 2 foster security employees who moonlighted as bouncers at exclusive Manhattan clubs. Their size alone was intimidating, but their friendly demeanor put Bradley at ease, exactly as intended. Vanessa, recovering her composure, made a beeline for Dominic. What the hell do you think you're doing? She hissed. Having a barbecue, Dominic replied mildly. Isn't that what you wanted? The perfect family hosting the perfect party. If you're trying to embarrass me, I'm not trying to do anything, he interrupted, flipping a steak with practiced ease. But if I were you, I'd be very careful about what happens next. The tension between them was interrupted by Trevor's arrival with a tray. Mom, Dad asked if you could make sure everyone gets served. His tone was flat, challenging. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. That's what the caterers are for. They're busy with the dessert setup, Trevor replied. Besides, isn't this what you always say? The hostess should always serve her guests personally. Isn't that what makes you better than everyone else? The barb landed precisely. Vanessa took the tray with a tight smile. Fine. As she moved through the crowd, serving food, Dominic gave Trevor a subtle nod. Trevor moved into position near his grandmother, Vanessa's mother, Eleanor, a widow with razor-sharp social instincts and a deeply judgmental nature. Eleanor had never approved of Dominic, seeing him as beneath her daughter despite his success. The feeling was mutual. Dominic found her pretentious and manipulative. Trevor engaged Eleanor in conversation just as Vanessa approached with the tray. What happened next went exactly according to plan. At the family barbecue, wife made my son serve food to everyone and said, he should be grateful we let her come. Like father, like son. Vanessa snapped loudly when Trevor pointed out she was now doing exactly what she'd forced him to do at previous gatherings. Eleanor seized the opportunity. Mother-in-law mocked his clothes, criticizing Trevor's casual attire as typical of his father's lack of standards. The entire party grew quiet at the public family discord. In the uncomfortable silence, a new player entered the scene. A tall man in a tailored suit emerged from a second black SUV that had arrived without notice. He walked directly to Trevor, ignoring the staring guests. Kiddo, ready for your surprise? He said loudly, handing Trevor an envelope. Everyone stopped chewing. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The man turned to face the crowd, his presence commanding. Allow me to introduce myself, he said. Nathan Wells, private investigator. I believe Mrs. Foster and Mr. Whitman know why I'm here. Chapter 6, The Unveiling. The aftermath of Nathan Wells's dramatic entrance unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony. Wells, a former FBI forensic accountant now working for Foster Security, had compiled a devastating dossier on Vanessa and Bradley's affair, complete with financial malfeasance. As guests quickly made excuses to leave, Dominic invited the key players to his study. Vanessa and Bradley, looking trapped. Eleanor, visibly shaken. Trevor and Heather, standing firmly beside their father. Ray and Nathan, controlling the perimeter. And Dr. Winters, observing with professional detachment. "What is this?" Vanessa demanded, her composure cracking. "Some kind of intervention? Think of it as a reckoning," Dominic replied calmly. He nodded to Nathan, who opened a laptop. "Mrs. Foster, over the past 8 months, you've diverted approximately $2.3 million from the Foster Family Foundation to shell companies controlled by Mr. Whitman. You've also withdrawn $750,000 from joint accounts, laundering the money through your art acquisition business." Bradley shifted nervously. "This is ridiculous. We haven't done anything illegal." "Actually," Ray interjected, "fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy are quite illegal. As is blackmail." "Blackmail?" Eleanor echoed, looking at her daughter. "Vanessa, what have you done?" "Nothing." Vanessa snapped. "This is Dominic trying to avoid a divorce settlement. He knows I'm entitled to half of everything." Dominic's laugh was hollow. "Is that what Bradley told you? That you get half?" He turned to the tennis pro. "Did you also tell her about the other married women you've defrauded? Or about your outstanding warrants in Connecticut and New Jersey?" Bradley's face drained of color. "That's a lie. 4 affairs with wealthy married women in the past 5 years," Nathan continued, pulling up documents. "Each ending with mysterious financial losses for the families involved. No charges filed. Too embarrassing for the husbands. Until now." Trevor stepped forward, opening the envelope Wells had given him. "Bank statements," he said, handing them to his mother. "From your foundation. Transfers to offshore accounts in Bradley's name." Vanessa stared at the papers, then at Bradley. "You told me those transfers were for property investments. For our future." Bradley's charming facade cracked. "Vanessa, don't listen to them. They're trying to turn you against me." "The foundation was supposed to be my legacy," she whispered. "The one thing that was mine." "It was never yours," Dominic said quietly. "It was our children's future you were stealing. And mine." Heather turned to Dr. Winters. "Is this consistent with the pattern you described? The narcissistic exploitation?" Dr. Winters nodded. "Textbook case. The foundation provided both external validation and a vehicle for financial manipulation." Eleanor, always quick to salvage a situation, turned on Bradley. "You preyed on my daughter. Used her. That's rich coming from you." "Mother," Vanessa snapped. "You encouraged me to find someone more suitable than Dominic for years. A better man, yes. Not a con artist." Eleanor retorted. Dominic raised a hand, silencing the room. "Here's what happens next. Vanessa, you will sign over your rights to the foundation. You will withdraw your divorce filing. Yes, I know about that too. You will return every penny you've diverted. And if I refuse?" Vanessa challenged, though her voice lacked conviction. "Then Nathan provides his evidence to the district attorney, the IRS, and the FBI. Your mother loses her standing in the community she values so much. You face criminal charges." "And Bradley?" Dominic smiled coldly. "Bradley faces his 3rd strike. Federal time." Bradley lunged toward the door, but Ray was faster, blocking his path with casual menace. "One more thing," Dominic continued. "You both signed comprehensive NDAs. This stays within these walls. Why would you protect your reputation?" Dr. Winters asked, her academic curiosity evident. After such betrayal, Dominic glanced at his children. "Because public humiliation would hurt Trevor and Heather. And despite everything, they're what matter to me." The negotiations continued late into the night. By dawn, agreements were signed, accounts were rebalanced, and the immediate crisis was contained. But for Dominic, this wasn't the end. It was merely the opening move in a much longer game. Chapter 7. Strategic Retreat. 3 months after the barbecue incident, an uneasy détente had settled over the Foster household. Vanessa, humiliated but pragmatic, maintained appearances while quietly seeking therapy, at Dominic's insistence and expense. Bradley Whitman had disappeared from their lives, reportedly taking a coaching position at a resort in Arizona. To the outside world, the Fosters remained an enviable power couple. Privately, They lived separate lives under one roof, an arrangement Dominic made clear was temporary. "I'm keeping the peace for the kids," he told Ray during their weekly security briefing. "But make no mistake, this isn't forgiveness." "You could have destroyed her completely," Ray observed. "Why the restraint?" Dominic's expression was unreadable. Immediate satisfaction versus long-term strategy. "I want her to rebuild a sense of security before I pull the rug out." "Cold," Ray commented, though without judgment. "Calculated," Dominic corrected. "Bradley was just a symptom. The real betrayal goes deeper." Trevor had flourished at foster security, showing an aptitude for operations that surprised everyone except his father. Heather had returned to college but remained vigilant, calling home more frequently and developing a closer relationship with Dominic. Eleanor, perhaps sensing which way the wind was blowing, had become uncharacteristically supportive of her son-in-law, inviting him to lunches and praising him publicly. Dominic accepted her overtures with polite distance, all while activating Phase 2 of his plan. Nathan Wells had continued his investigation, digging deeper into Vanessa's past and uncovering patterns that predated their marriage. "Your wife has secrets that go back to college," Nathan reported during a secure meeting at Foster Security. "Before you met her." "Specifics," Dominic prompted. "A sealed juvenile record and connections to people she claims not to know, including Bradley Whitman. They attended the same high school. Different years, but definite overlap." Dominic absorbed this. Their meeting at the club wasn't coincidence. Unlikely. And there's more. The foundation wasn't her first attempt at financial diversion. There was a charity auction 5 years ago. Funds unaccounted for. The children's hospital benefit, Dominic remembered. She chaired the committee. Precisely. And guess who provided consulting services? "Let me guess. A company connected to Bradley." Nathan nodded. "Through his sister. Different last name. She's married. That's why it didn't flag initially." Dominic leaned back. "They've been working together for years. Right under my nose. It appears so. Find the sister, and anyone else connected to their operation. Leave no stone unturned." That evening, Dominic attended a charity gala with Vanessa. She had been nervous about public appearances since the barbecue, but Dominic had insisted, citing the importance of maintaining their social position. "You look beautiful," he told her as they entered the ballroom, his compliment genuine despite everything. Vanessa had always been skilled at presenting the perfect facade. "Thank you," she replied, searching his face for signs of his true feelings. "Dom, I've been thinking, maybe we should consider counseling. Together, I mean." He smiled, squeezing her hand for the benefit of watching eyes. "One step at a time. You focus on your healing first." The false hope in her eyes was exactly what he wanted. Let her believe reconciliation was possible. Let her rebuild her sense of security. It would make the final fall that much more devastating. Chapter 8. Pieces on the board. 6 months after the barbecue, Dominic implemented the next phase of his plan. He announced his semi-retirement from day-to-day operations at Foster Security, appointing Trevor as director of special projects with Ray as his mentor. "It's time for new blood," he declared at the company's quarterly meeting. "And who better than family to carry forward our values?" The move was celebrated in industry publications, with profiles of Trevor as the rising star following in his father's footsteps. Vanessa, seeing her son's success, attempted to rebuild their relationship, inviting him to lunches and sending thoughtful gifts. Trevor maintained polite distance, following his father's example of strategic patience. Dominic, meanwhile, made a show of pursuing personal interests, golf memberships, fishing trips, wine collecting. To the casual observer, he appeared to be enjoying a well-earned step back from professional life. In reality, he was orchestrating the most complex operation of his career. Nathan Wells had located Bradley's sister, Melissa Hargrove, a financial consultant living in Boston. Through careful surveillance, they discovered she managed a network of shell companies that had processed funds from not just the Foster Foundation, but 6 other charitable organizations across the Northeast. "It's a sophisticated operation," Nathan explained, showing Dominic the evidence. "They target wealthy couples with specific vulnerabilities. Bradley initiates romantic connections with the wives, while Melissa creates the financial infrastructure to siphon funds. And Eleanor? What's her role? Dominic asked. Nathan hesitated. That's the most disturbing part. We found communications suggesting she's the one who identifies potential targets, including you 15 years ago. Dominic felt cold fury settle in his chest. My mother-in-law has been working with them from the beginning. It appears so. She receives a percentage of every successful operation. The betrayal was even deeper than he'd imagined. Not just his wife, but his mother-in-law had seen him as nothing more than a mark. A wealthy target to be manipulated and exploited. What about Heather and Trevor? He asked, his voice tight. Are they? No, Nathan said firmly. All evidence suggests they were kept completely in the dark. In fact, based on the communications we've intercepted, Eleanor has been pressuring Vanessa for years to keep the children uninvolved and unaware. Small mercies, Dominic thought. With the full picture emerging, Dominic finalized his counterstrike. He called a meeting with his most trusted team, Ray, Nathan, and now Trevor, who had earned his place in the inner circle. We move in 3 weeks, he announced, simultaneously against all targets. What about Mom? Trevor asked, his voice carefully neutral. Dominic studied his son. Your mother made her choices. Are you prepared for the consequences? Trevor nodded, his expression hardening. She used us as props in her scheme. Used me to maintain her cover. I'm ready. The plan was comprehensive. Financial, legal, and personal destruction of everyone involved in the scheme. Not just Bradley and Melissa, but the entire network they'd built, including Eleanor. As for Vanessa, Dominic had something special in mind. She values 2 things above all else, he told Trevor privately. Her social standing and her illusion of moral superiority. We'll strip her of both. The final pieces fell into place when Heather came home for spring break, bringing with her research she'd been conducting with Dr. Winters on psychological manipulation within family systems. It's fascinating, Dad, she explained over dinner, carefully avoiding looking at her mother. How people can compartmentalize their morality, convince themselves they're the hero of their own story, even while causing immense harm. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. This sounds rather dark, darling. I thought psychology was about helping people. Oh, this will help people, Heather replied coolly. Victims of narcissistic abuse deserve to understand what happened to them. Don't you agree, Mom? The table fell silent. Dominic watched his daughter with pride and a touch of sadness. She had grown harder through all this, more like him. That night, after everyone had retired, Dominic received a text from a number he didn't recognize. All assets in position. Green light? He replied with a single word, execute. Chapter 9, Checkmate. The dismantling of what came to be called the Foundation Network made headlines across the financial and social elite circles of the Northeast. In a coordinated sweep, federal agents arrested Melissa Hargrove and 4 associates on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. Bradley Whitman, attempting to flee his Arizona resort upon hearing the news, was apprehended at the Mexican border with $150,000 in cash and a false passport. Eleanor suffered a very public humiliation when IRS agents arrived at her country club during ladies' luncheon, serving her with search warrants and asset freezes. The carefully curated reputation she'd maintained for decades crumbled in a single afternoon. Through carefully placed leaks and strategic cooperation with authorities, Dominic ensured that his own family's involvement was characterized as that of victims who had assisted in exposing a criminal enterprise. Foster Security was praised for its role in the investigation, with Trevor highlighted as instrumental in bringing the perpetrators to justice. But for Vanessa, Dominic had designed a far more personal reckoning. On the morning the story broke, he invited her to his study. She entered cautiously, having seen the news reports. Is this your revenge? She asked, her voice surprisingly steady. Using the legal system to destroy my mother and Bradley? Justice isn't revenge, Dominic replied. But no, that's not my revenge. This is. He handed her a thick folder. Inside were printouts of emails, text messages, and recorded conversations spanning their entire marriage. Evidence of her systematic manipulation, her contempt for him behind his back, her strategic use of their children as props in her carefully constructed facade. "I've known who you really are for longer than you think," he said quietly. "Not just the affair with Bradley or the foundation money. I've known about the others. The lies. All of it." Color drained from her face. "How? I'm a security expert, Vanessa. Did you really think I wouldn't have safeguards in place?" He shook his head. "But I wanted to believe the best. That's my failure." She rallied slightly. "You can't prove intent. Anything in there could be interpreted multiple ways." "True," he conceded, "which is why the final decision isn't mine." He pressed a button on his desk phone. "They're ready for you." The door opened to reveal Trevor and Heather, both solemn-faced. "The children deserve to know the truth," Dominic said, echoing the anonymous text from months ago, a text he had sent himself to set his plan in motion. All of it. For the next hour, Trevor and Heather reviewed the evidence their father had compiled. Text messages where Vanessa mocked Dominic to Bradley. Recordings where she discussed using Trevor as leverage in divorce proceedings. Emails where she dismissed Heather's accomplishments as useful for our family image. Vanessa's attempts at denial, then justification, then tearful apologies fell on deaf ears. By the end, she sat defeated, stripped of her last offense, the love of her children. "You've lost everything that matters," Dominic told her when they were alone again. "Your mother will likely die in prison. Bradley is facing 20 years. Your social circle knows exactly what kind of person you are. And our children have seen the real you." "What happens now?" she asked hollowly. "You'll receive a fair divorce settlement. Enough to live comfortably, but modestly. You'll sign over full custody of Trevor and Heather, though they're adults now anyway. You'll leave Westchester. In fact, you'll leave the Northeast entirely. The house in Santa Fe should suit you. Isolated. Quiet. You're banishing me." "I'm setting you free," he corrected. "Free from the burden of pretending to be someone you're not. Free from the family you never really wanted. Isn't that what you've been working toward all these years?" She had no answer. 6 months later, Dominic hosted another family barbecue. The guest list was smaller, trusted colleagues, Trevor's new girlfriend, Heather, and Dr. Winters, who had become something of a surrogate mother figure to both children. As Dominic grilled steaks with practiced ease, Ray approached with a beer. "Quarterly reports show we're up 30%, Ray reported. "Trevor's security protocol overhaul is being adopted industry-wide." Dominic nodded with satisfaction. "He's exceeded my expectations. You know Vanessa's appealing the settlement. Let her. The prenup is ironclad now that we've established criminal intent." Ray studied his old friend. Was it worth it? The long game. Dominic looked across the lawn, where Trevor and Heather were laughing together, stronger and more resilient for having weathered the storm. He thought of Vanessa, isolated in Santa Fe, her carefully constructed world reduced to ashes. Of Eleanor, serving the first year of a 12-year sentence. Of Bradley, making license plates in federal prison. "Justice isn't about worth," Dominic replied. "It's about restoration of balance. They took from me my trust, my family's security, years of my life lived under false pretenses. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted understanding. Understanding. I wanted them to understand exactly who they had chosen to betray." Dominic's smile was cold, but satisfied. "Now they do." He raised his beer in a silent toast to the future, one built on his terms, with the people who had proven their loyalty. The man who had arrived in a black SUV at last year's barbecue had set events in motion that transformed their lives. But it was Dominic who had orchestrated every move, patient and relentless, until checkmate was inevitable. Some men might have offered forgiveness, but Dominic Foster was not that man. He was the man who had built an empire from nothing, who had survived betrayal by those closest to him, and who had extracted a price for that betrayal that would echo through generations. And in the end, he stood triumphant, not just surviving, but thriving, while those who had wronged him faced the consequences of underestimating exactly who he was. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. and I'll see you there.